Okay, look, here's what it means to be. All right, here's a timeline. All right, you're born here, you die here. This is being. Right? Does anybody disagree? Probably not. Okay, so what does it mean to die? First of all, because we're trying to figure out this huge complex thing. Being is a complicated thing, right? So first, what does it mean to die? Well, there's two possibilities, right? The first possibility is that what the fuck are you doing? The first possibility is that death is the separation of the soul from the body, right? So here you are, and then death means that you become, I don't know, like a ghost or something. Right? This is called dualism. Dualism is the idea that the mind, so what's in here, the consciousness, and your brain, they're two different things, right? Because consciousness, it must be like a different material, right? And when you die, the consciousness separates, and then you keep on living, and so death is not the permanent end of a person, right? The second possibility is called physicalism, and it says that death is the permanent end of a person. That's kind of the definition we're more used to, right? So first of all, why is this wrong? This is wrong for a number of reasons, right? Why is dualism wrong? So the first problem that dualism runs into is that, well, if the mind, the consciousness, it's not physical, then how does it push the buttons in our brains, right? If it's not physical, how do I make my arm move, right? If it's not my brain, right? It's a mind-body problem, guys. So another problem with dualism is that we know that the brain must affect consciousness and memory and your mind somehow, because if you have someone whose brain has been damaged, they may lose part of their memory, may lose part of their consciousness, right? They may lose part of their cognitive processes. And so the mind and the body, it must be physically connected somehow. It must be intensely connected, right? And so dualism, which is understood as there being a soul and a body, it can't exist, right? But then you might say, well, okay, even if the mind and the brain are really connected, that doesn't mean that we can't have a soul, right? Well, maybe we can still have a soul, but the mind and the brain are just very, very connected, right? And well, you can't really prove that wrong, right? Because you could have anything after you die. But the question then becomes, what exactly survives after death? Because since our consciousness and our brain are so deeply connected, as we've already proven, then nothing really survives after your death, right? Your consciousness doesn't survive, your personhood, your memories, right? And so death is still the permanent end of a person, right? The concept, the notion of death as being the separation of the soul from the body it only exists because we want to believe it, right? Because there's many good reasons to want to believe it, right? We want to go to heaven, we want to keep living, right? But really, it's unfounded, right? And so this is a debunking argument. We've debunked dualism, which means that we said that the processes by which we arrive at the conclusion of dualism is fallacious, because that process is that we want to believe it, right? It's called a debunking argument. So that's what death is. It's the permanent end of a person, right? So then what is being, right? Being is, it's a complicated question that this philosopher called Heidegger, he tries to answer, right? So that's the main, he's the main character today. So,
Heidegger.
I don't know, man.
This is Heidegger.
Let's say we have a hammer, right?
What? Hamlet.
Hammer. What is a hammer? What does it mean for the hammer to be, right? Well, you might say the hammer it's a piece of iron on a piece of wood, right? But this is not the type of being that Heidegger talks about, right? Because what is a hammer? How do we understand what a hammer is deeply based on us as humans, right? we understand a hammer not as a piece of iron and wood, but also there's also other things, right? A hammer is used for driving nails into a piece of wood, right? So in order for the notion of a hammer to exist, nails must exist, wood must exist, and the action of hammering must exist, right? And so being, in this sense, a hammer, what a hammer is, what it means for the hammer to be, is deeply connected in this web of meaning that humans assign to it. It's a web of context, right? And so being is not just what there is. It's about the context that humans assign it, right? Because we can only understand being in terms of humans because that's what we are, right? That's what we're limited to. And so being most likely refers to the context surrounding a thing that exists. It's not just existing, right? It's also being part and taking part in the world, the wider world, right? And so being a human is also like this, right? It's not just you existing and being an observer and you don't interact with the world, right? Being a human is like you go to your day job as like a McDonald's cashier or something. You go to sleep with your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, right? Right? So there's lots of things you do as humans, right? And you exist in the world, right? That's the essence of being. It's not just existing, it's also partaking in this world and this web of connections, right? Now, there's two ways of being a human, Heidegger says. The first way is to be AFK, right? AFK means away from keyboard, which means that you're not really thinking about what you're doing, right? So for example, you wake up today and then you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast, you come to school, you go back, do some homework, go to sleep, right? You don't really think about what you're doing. And this is ingenuine. This is living not for yourself, but for other people and for the world, right? Because you're partaking in the world without real thought about what you want to do and what you want to be. It's ingenuine. That's what he says, right? He calls it, I don't know, living for the day. I don't really know what that means. It's basically not putting thought in, right? And so instead, he says that, oh my God, William, finally. So, how can you live always in accordance with your own wishes, right? It's to know that you're going to die soon, right? So the essence of being in a genuine way, doing what you want, is to know that you're going to die, because that gives you a new incentive. That incentive is urgency, right? You realize that your time is limited, and so, look, the moral takeaway from Heidegger is very, very simple, and it's even been turned into a cliche. It's just live every day as if it was your last, right? It's been spread far and wide, right? And so, what should you do to live genuinely, right? You want to pursue your own interests. It's very much like Nietzsche, right? Don't do what society tells you to do, and instead do what you feel like is right? Walk the path that society might not advise against, right? And so that's how you live genuinely. Is that it? Is Heidegger this easy to explain? Also, we can talk a bit more about time, right? How does Heidegger conceptualize time? Because his magnum opus is called Being and Time, right? So let's talk about time. So he talks about like the past, present, and the future, right? And so the past is something, he sees the world as something that's always been here, right? The past are things you can't control. You've been thrown into this world where everything's already happened, right? And then there's this, you have to react to it, right? You're in a state of, you can't control the past, right? But the future is defined by possibility, right? There are things that you can control in the future. You can will certain outcomes to manifest in the future. So that's his belief, right? He doesn't believe in determinism. He believes that, human will can achieve anything. Very similar to Nietzsche, right? Very similar to Nietzsche. The only way in which you will use those possibilities in the future to their fullest extent is if you know that you're going to die, and you have that sense of urgency that's like, oh, I got to will these possibilities into existence, and I don't want to keep living in my stupid job, in my stupid school, according to these stupid social expectations, because I'm going to die one day, right? You get this urgency, you get this motivation, and now you get to will these possibilities into existence. Now, whether or not you can will possibilities into existence is, debatable, right? It's debatable whether or not you even have free will, right? But according to his view, it is possible, and it's undeniable that the realization of death is liberating to some people. It's liberating because it allows them to finally, do what they actually want to do, because they have this urgency. Okay, that's the rant. Any questions? Questions? No? Okay.